Previously on the SDP.
Your magic costs you the ability to speak English.
それで生きていかなければならない。
Listen, I came back here because I'm ready to start the new season of our show. Are you ready?
最後なことに、僕はムサ文学ヒーロー風天道道場へ訓練を受けています。
This may be an obvious question, but what are you doing here? Oh, I'm just playing the Super Mario World. It's my favorite game for the Nintendo NES. I thought I'd never see you again. This is Kevin with the Strawberry Dragon Gamer. Yeah, we're not going to see him again. See, I did say that. Yeah.
And then a whole lot of nothing. But now this happens.
Oh, hi, didn't see you there. I'm Craig Jarvis, and today on the Strawberry Dragon Gamer Show, I'm going to talk about Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Now, before you send your hate mail, hear me out. I'm not saying Zelda 2 sucks, but when you put it next to the other games in the series, it's the worst of the bunch. In fact, I'd even say it's a total piece of shh. I'm back in, you're back out. Now scram. Okay, I'm going. Zapper. Gets me every time, Ichigo.
そのことの力をしていますか?
Evidently not. Right. Hi, welcome to the SDP. I'm Kevin, the Happy Hipster.
僕はイチゴ、アニメの京都ホストだ。
And in honor of the host of You Can Play This, Mr. Juwario. Yeah, I know it's been half a year since he died, but I was on hiatus. What do you expect? Well, anyway, in honor of his passing, I thought I'd review an import video game for you. None less than Initial D Special Stage for the PlayStation 2. And yes, fellow viewers... Oh, yeah! Stop. Editor, you played the wrong intro. It's supposed to say, you can play this on the title, you know, like Jew Warrior did on his show, and I was leading into that phrase, you know what, forget it, let's just play the regular intro. I love video arcades.
僕も
Of course, you were magically cloned from me, remember? But with home console video games gaining so much relevance over the past decade or two, the only way for arcades to catch up was to employ gimmicks of all sorts. One such gimmick was employed by Sega's Initial D arcade stage racing games from the early 2000s. Now, these games let you purchase a memory card of sorts, a thin cardboardy type dealie, which would save your stats and upgrades to your car. This proved to be a big draw for me since I got to it. In fact, I still have mine. And being a good licensed game, based on a manga and anime franchise, was only icing on the cake. Sadly, by the time I did get into the arcade stage games, their popularity in America was supplanted by the Fast and the Furious series by Raw Thrills, a spiritual successor to Cruisin' USA. It had a similar game save mechanic, and despite my resignations, I still pumped in numerous quarters into those machines, but I found them to be basic, unpolished, and unfulfilling alternative to Initial D once arcades started replacing them with all that Americanized tripe. Personally, I blame the American Amusement Standardization Act of 2005. Thanks a lot, Tom DeLay. Okay, not really. As I was saying, even though the 4 arcade stage games have become increasingly harder to find...
8つ
Excuse me?
日本では8つのイニシャル D アーケードステージゲームがあります。
So, not only are the games that much more popular in Japan, but you guys got an extra 4 versions. Excuse me for a moment.
これはコマーシャルに行くや。
We don't do commercial.
そう、僕は何をするや。エディターさん、陸路して、今。
What the
Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling.
What? His name's Rick. Rick Ross. So anyway, the good news is that Sega saw fit to create a home version of the game in the form of Initial D Special Stage for the PlayStation 2. The bad news is, it was only released in Japan. Like, that's gonna stop me from playing it. So let's get acclimated with the universe in which it takes place.
Initial D started life in 1995 as a manga series written and drawn by Shuichi Shigeno. The universe of Initial D centers around Takumi Fujiwara, a teenager who develops spectacular driving skills from working for his father's tofu shop, and reluctantly enters the world of toge racing, one-on-one duels on Japan's winding mountain roads. Through his years of driving experience, he transforms his car, a sleeper Toyota, into the stuff of legends among his friends and rivals. In fact, the popularity of this franchise has given renewed fame to drift racing, and Takumi's car in particular, the Sprinter Terreno, sold as the Corolla in the US, but also known by its chassis code, AE86 or just 86. Mate ya, Kevin-kun. Minasan wa Nihongo o yomenai ne? Dono you ni shite game wo play suru ka?
Good point, Ichigo. Fire up that tutorial music and let's get started.
Special Stage lets you live the action in 3 ways. The Legend of the Streets mode is identical to the arcade experience. There's also the Story mode, a series of 30 or so scenarios which recreate scenes from the manga, and Time Attack, where you can run through courses without opponents or even a time limit. The other choices available from the main menu are the Replay Theater, Koichiro's Car Museum, which plays demos of the game's various cars with a Japanese narration about the car, save and load controls, and other options. Also, unlike in most Japanese PlayStation games, you can move forward in menus by pressing the X button as well as circle, whereas triangle and square take you backwards. See? Not that bad. I'll start with the arcade mode. On the first menu, you have a choice of setting up a new profile or loading an existing one from the garage. You get to pick your car from brands like Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Mitsubishi, and others, and change body colors by pressing up or down. Then you get to choose an upgrade course. Playing races, win or lose, earns you upgrade points, which are used to add modifications to your car at certain milestones. These mods are mainly of the decorative variety, but it helps to create a sort of bond between you and your virtual car. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why I grew addicted to the arcade version, but on a home console where you're not charged $1 a game, I have to say the impact isn't quite as profound. Once that's done, you have to set up your name. By default, the keyboard will display Japanese katakana first. To switch to hiragana, select the first icon on the far right, and for the Latin alphabet, the icon below that. Note that you only get space for 5 letters on either alphabet. Once you're done, select the red icon on the far right. Now, you get to take on challengers at your leisure. Only 6 courses are available in arcade mode, and of them, only 2 are circuit tracks where you have to do laps. All the others are one-way courses driven either uphill or downhill, and let me tell you, there's a huge difference between driving the same course up or downhill. Not only will the turns come at you in reverse order, but your car will accelerate differently depending on whether it's going up or down, so the limited track selection becomes less of an issue. In story mode, you're given a series of 30-odd missions which roughly replicate events from the manga. The missions are bookended by panels from the manga with Japanese voiceovers, which thankfully you can skip over. Not all of these missions require you to finish ahead of the other guys, so a little experience reading Japanese would be useful after all, assuming you can find an online FAQ that tells you the stuff. For example, the first mission puts you on a solo run where you have to not hit the walls in order to avoid spilling water from a cup, as depicted by an on-screen meter. And this being the first mission, of course it's easier than it's depicted in the comics, or in real life for that matter. Finally, there's Time Attack. You use the same car profiles and courses as in the arcade mode, but you have control over what direction you want to run in, the time of day, the weather, and finally, you can load a ghost of a previous run from your memory card. Since the events in arcade and story mode utilize night and or rainy versions of the tracks, Time Attack mode is a stress-free way to practice anything that's been giving you trouble.
Alright, enough background exposition or we'll be here all day. Let's just get to the frickin' game already.
The controls are simple enough. X is throttle, square is brake, yada yada. The buttons can also be manually assigned from the options menu, although I'm bamboozled as to why there's no rear view button, but there is a button to turn the headlights on and off. But hey, if you want the extra challenge, who am I to judge? Special Stage's physics engine allows you to break into a drift rather easily. Most high-speed turns are enough to generate some smoke from the tires, but in order to truly take on the corners without dropping precious revs, it's better to start out playing Gran Turismo style, braking well ahead of sharper turns and all that. You know, just like driving in real life. Once you've picked up enough skill in the basics, consider developing your own in-game driving technique. Although to master the more technical maneuvers, get used to playing with manual transmission enabled. All things considered, the handling in Special Stage straddles the line between stimulation and true fantasy arcade-style control. The assortment of playable cars is predominantly composed of Japanese mid-90s models and doesn't offer a lot of variety in practice. The only statistic that has any major effect on the car's handling is whether it runs on a front-wheel, rear-wheel, or four-wheel drive platform. On the bright side, you're not likely to screw yourself over by picking an inferior car, but anyone who's familiar with more realism-oriented racers like Gran Turismo should find it odd that in this game, it's entirely possible for a lowly Suzuki Cappuccino to keep up with the mighty Nissan Skyline despite a 4-to-1 disparity in horsepower alone. The graphics in Special Stage pretty much reach the bars set by high-end PS2 titles from a few years prior. It does run smoothly in 60 frames per second, but doesn't do much else of note. Not that it needs to, anyway. I mean, face it, it's easy to make a racing game look good. Shigeno-san's illustrations are featured in character portraits and on the loading screens. Regardless of whether you like his art style, it's nice that they worked it in, to give the game some personality. The collision model is a potential point of contention, however. Depending on how you hit the other car, you may be able to slingshot past it, or him to you. Yes, I've used it to gain an unfair advantage every once in a while, so I shouldn't have to give horse in the mouth, but still, moments like that can take you out of the experience, Staying true to the spirit of the anime, and presumably toge culture in general, the soundtrack is composed of licensed Eurobeat songs. As a critic, I'm not supposed to account for taste, so I'll instead warn you that this high-tempo poppy material may not be for everyone. In fact, you could make a similar argument for the game itself. It's not just that the language barrier is a little steep. At the very least, knowing the hiragana and katakana alphabets will be a big help. But given the unique techniques one needs to learn in order to perform best at this game, and that there is no training mode to speak of, the learning curve will come across as sharper if your racing game experience leads more towards Mario Kart than Gran Turismo. But make no mistake, Initial D Special Stage is great at what it does, and it's worth putting on your list, especially if you're a racing pro, or if you're looking to get your feet wet in the waters of import gaming. Initial D Special Stage scores 85%, B+.
So that's my review, but before I go, I'd like to share with you two other games made out of the Initial D franchise, and they're both ports of the various arcade stage games. And neither one of them were sold in America or Europe.
Initial D Street Stage, based on the third arcade version, was released for the PlayStation Portable. Being a PSP game, it's not region-locked, so you can just buy a copy and it'll work on your American PSP console. That was followed up by Initial D Extreme Stage for the PlayStation 3, which borrows content from the third and fourth arcade versions. It lacks the story mode of Special Stage, but the car and character customization is vastly improved, letting you select individual parts instead of a preset upgrade course. And again, since it's on the PS3, it's also region-free. In fact, it kinda makes me wonder why I didn't review one of those games first. I mean, it takes extra work and money to get import games to run on a PS2, but that was the first one I played, so that's the one I review. And besides, what I've said about Special Stage, you could pretty much say for any other game in the series. It's all good.
This is Kevin, with Ichigo, and you are the Resistance. I don't always ask for subscribers, but when I do, I bid you a fond afterlife, Jew Wario. Stay thirsty, my friends.